Hey guys, wanted to go over a bit of this background with you for this cover. As you saw from the other videos, I was recording these. I couldn't really speak because I just got out of the dentist. And yeah, to be honest, I also wasn't in a mood to talk and draw at the same time. So I just figured it was better off to just record something and let you guys decide if you want to kind of scrub through it or what. But right now I'm going to show you a bit of what I'm doing with the background. And the background here, kind of hard to see, but this is a printout that I did. So I did the layouts for this cover in Photoshop, or actually in Clip Studio. And then separately, this background here is from Google Sketchup. And I'll do a little lesson at some point about how I use Google Sketchup and different ways to use it. There are a lot of different ways you can use it. Here I found a model that had a really nice grid system over all the buildings, so it creates this natural perspective shot here. And in this case, what I'm doing is I've just picked out the background that I wanted, or the buildings that I wanted, plopped it into the background here. Now, to keep it from looking mechanical or artificial, I'm going to just ink directly over it. I'm also not going to use any rulers because I want it to feel organic. I don't want it to feel too thought out. And one of the problems is because there's so much detail on here with the perspective, I could really easily get carried away and do way too much. And I'm going to attempt to keep it pretty simple. I'm going to use this is a Pigma Micron pen that I liked a lot. Graphic number 1. It's got this kind of thick tip to it, but it's got a little bit of variation. So, you know, I can keep it kind of thin, and I can go much thicker with it, especially if I was using a slightly fresher brush. Let's try this one out. Let's see if this is a little bit better. Yeah, I could tell from looking at the tip here, it's going to be a lot nicer. So I'm going to use a combination of this thick brush and this thinner Uniball pen. I like the Uniball pens a lot. They're just really super sturdy. They don't bleed. They got a nice simple line to it. It's weird that it's a, writing pen, but I like it a lot. Taking a look at here, I don't want this area down here to be too plain like this. This is just straight grid, so I'm going to indicate some water towers. Water towers are always good to put on top of buildings. The top of buildings, almost like a city in themselves. You can really take time to create a sense of another world on top of the buildings. Like when you go to a city, obviously like New York, I remember growing up in Jersey, idolizing New York as a sort of like mythological place. And I finally got there to some cons and got a hotel, and I was up in the hotel rooms at like the Penn, I think it's the Penn Hotel, getting to see like the top of the buildings really look like what David Mazzucchelli and Frank Miller and these other guys were drawing up there. It's just this whole other city just full of smaller buildings and air conditioning stuff and pipes, and it's a whole other world. It's not flat, and it's something that I really love getting into. But I'm going to do most of this kind of just guessing as I go along. I'm just going to be pretty organic with it. I'm going to outline the edges of the building, these thicker lines. And I'm using the crop marks over here. I'm going to like just ruler this off and then fill this in black, but it'll get cropped inside of that area. I'm going to use a little bit of my own imagination here as well. So while the perspective line on here is for a flat surface, I'm going to create this little ledge, which I see around a lot of these buildings. Like when you look at buildings, some of them do have just straight up and down edges, but most of them don't. Most of them have some sort of variation to them. And you can see the imperfection in my lines here. To me, that just adds a certain level of energy to the building, makes it feel more real. If you ever trace like a photo of buildings, things are not completely lined up the way you would if you laid out a perspective grid. Can't say why, it's just, it is that way. A lot of these details are ultimately going to end up getting covered as well. And I feel like this little air conditioning unit thing here will be slightly exposed. That's why I'm using a thinner line on parts of it. All of which might end up getting covered, which is fine. This will all be black in here. Going to indicate a little skylight. Along here. Sometimes I'll use that thinner line for the windows. Other times I'm going to use a nice thick one like this. So I'm creating some space to indicate that there's floors in between the windows. Sometimes it's fun to do that checkerboard pattern, but when you do that checkerboard pattern, you're not really leaving too much space to indicate that there's floors in between the windows, you know. So this is all I'm going to do. Keep it nice and light. Patterns on buildings can be kind of thicker like this, or it can do a different kind of pattern, even on the same building. Like a different side of the building might have a different pattern to it. You know, it just depends on the style that you want for that building. So like over here, often when I'm laying out black, I try to think in terms of a checkerboard. If I have a white area, I want a black area on either side. So when I'm extending this part of the building out, because there's this white edge that's going to be there, probably going to be there, I might end up filling it in Photoshop, then it's going to go so black, white, black, white, black, white, black. So I'm going to indicate the levels of the building here. This time I'm going to use thin lines in between, so this feels a little bit more, it gives it a slightly more of a modern feel. And what's also fun is to play around with the patterns inside of these. So sometimes you want two lines next to each other with some space, and then two lines to give a different sense of the building's proportions. This is all going to be black here, so I don't care that it's a little funky. I'll give a little bit of highlight to this water tower. Not much, just a little bit. Again, indicate a little skylight here or something. All right, so let's do a different window pattern here. Kind of like what I was talking about with the thin to thick lines. Okay, so I'm just going to have one line going right down the middle. But then for these windows, I'm going to go 1, 2, 1, 2. See, so this just gives variation, like even in this little tiny bit that I'm showing you here. It's just a little tiny area. Let me see if I get the camera closer. All right, so in this little tiny area here, now I've got these more horizontal, or sorry, vertical shaped windows. These feel more horizontal because there's a really thick line here. And then these double lines here. It all just creates a sense of depth variation, the illusion of depth. Also, if you do something like this, so see how this shape is off of the perspective grid, that gives the indication that there's a tilted part of the building here. I'll kind of draw it in there. You know, and we see this a lot when you look down at buildings too. Can indicate that there's some wooden texture in there. This all looks like a mess right now, but what I do is I'll drop my blacks in Photoshop here, just because it takes so much time to fill in black. Even like this area here, if you look at the other video where I'm filling this black area, that's almost 10 minutes. 10 minutes might not sound like a lot, but it really is when you're trying to create multiple pages a day or you're on deadlines. So often what I'll do is I don't fill in the blacks until later, until I'm ready to sell the pages. Then I'll sit down and I'll fill in all the black areas. But it's time consuming. It just really is. It's kind of heartbreaking at the time. You know, you're sitting there just fiddling away, filling in little black areas. It can drive you nuts after a while. I'll do this one other building here. And then I think you've got the idea. And, you know, I mean, if you've got the patience, go ahead and fill in the black areas while you're working. It's not just patience. Some people need to. I'm very much about the finished file, like what's going to go print. That's what matters to me, not the page itself. You know, I wish my original pages looked all immaculate and beautiful when I finished them. I would love that, but I don't have that mindset. My mindset is about getting pages done, meeting my deadlines, getting ideas out. As long as I got you here and I'm yapping at you guys, I want to thank you again for supporting me on this Patreon page. I love being able to share ideas with you guys and process and getting feedback from you about how I can make it a better experience for you guys. I'd like to record something every day, but a lot of times I don't have the mental energy for it. It's kind of surprising how distracting this is, and it really does slow me down. But you know, you guys are worth it, and this whole thing is worth it. The idea of doing this, and not just the work in progress stuff, but then you know, I've got all these other comics like Hawk Mother and a bunch of other ones that I want to do that are comics I wouldn't be able to find a place for online or at home. Excuse me. See, this is why I have problems thinking and drawing at the same time. I find a place for in the printed world, which is kind of like a home for me. So yeah, really appreciate it. Oh, and I've got some great stuff planned. I mean, some really exciting stuff. So this is fun too. So right now I've got these vertical lines, and then there's this nice horizontal shape. So for contrast, I'm going to go this way and then this way. And if I went to art school, I'd probably have some sort of term for this, but I didn't. I didn't go to art school because, well, honestly, couldn't afford it. Didn't really have the infrastructure to guide me there or anything like that. But that's okay, because I met other people who were sort of my art school, taught me lots of stuff. And that's one of the great things about comics. You don't need to have an affluent background to just sit down and do the work. There's so many different paths to making comics. So this is a long process. It's going to take a while, but I think you've got the gist here. Of course, we'll do more of these kind of videos in the future. Actually, what will probably work out better is if I do something like this live. That way I don't have to record it and then store it, load it up to YouTube and all that kind of stuff. because there's a whole other process too. Once I scan this in, then there's other things I could do. I could select this area, this area, this area, this area, so that these white lines stay untouched. And then I can take more lines and go through here, or reflective lines and go through there like that. And then a lot of times in Photoshop, I'll just accidentally drop some black someplace, you know, and then go, oh my God, like I drew all of this great face or this nice background, but it looks better if it's just covered in black. And you only find that out through like these little happy mistakes, you know, like happy trees, but they're happy mistakes. So yeah, I think that'll be fun. I guess I'll put out some sort of poll or something to ask you guys generally what's better for everybody of us to do something live. I'm also not sure if I do a live recording, if it stays on the page as a video you can rewatch again, like on Twitch or something. I'm assuming so, but I don't know. I'm battling. Anyhow, so that's a little bit about how I do some of my background. Of course, I still do the traditional thing of like, I'll sketch out the buildings and I'll lay down the perspective lines. It all depends on the mood, you know, how quick I need to move and stuff. These are some pretty tightly packed weeks here. We've got conventions coming up, the Rose CityCon and some other stuff going on. So my time has been limited recently, so I'm doing things as quickly as possible. Although the quicker way, there's another way to take these models and you print out. You can just turn these lines into like vector lines and then just do a few lines right on top of it, and it's already half drawn for you and stuff. But I feel like that's, I don't want to call it cheating at all, but it's kind of a last resort for time restraints. But this, I'm pretty happy with this process. So just give you an idea how long it would take if I continue to fill in the black. And I know a lot of you guys out there who are watching are probably, you know, you've got office jobs and, you know, day jobs, so you need to figure out ways to be productive, to make comics, go to the office, spend time with the family, and still have some time for yourself to work. So that's why for you guys specifically, not filling your blacks, but using Photoshop and these other shortcuts I'll show you are really useful. I mean, look how long this is taking me. It's driving me nuts right now. But at the same time, you get really nice little accidents out of this and textures. There's no right or wrong way. To me, it's all about, well, what is your goal at the time, process-wise? Do you need to get things done fast because of your lifestyle? Do you have time to take time on something? Does your mind work in such a way that you need to fill in the black on the page? I don't know. But there's different ways. There's ways of going about this no matter what your process needs are. But my suggestion is it's about the finished work. If you just need your pages to look immaculate, then that feels more like Illustrator work to me. You know, or like you want to be a painter or something. Now, comics are about holding it in your hands or reading it digitally now, and I don't want to use disposable in like in a bad way, but it kind of is, but like in a good way. You know, you read your comic, you read that frame, you absorb it, you move on. Maybe you'll come back to it later to reread it or something, but it's, you know, to me, these are meant to be consumed in mass, you know, but that's just me. Anyway, I hope that was useful. I feel like I was rambling. It's kind of hard to draw, think, and talk all at the same time. Yeah. So I hope you like that, and yeah, I'll talk to you soon. Thanks a lot, guys.